Quick question about your bag. If the 4-year cycle is over and we're in a new era, do you have last cycle's bag? How do you get a new bag? Well, don't go anywhere. I'm going to tell you. I am your host, Bill Noble. This is the Market Update. Subscribe to the channel and turn on alerts so you know when we're going live, 8 a.m. most mornings Eastern Time. Now, obviously, everyone in altcoins is discouraged. Why are you discouraged? Well, every time the market goes up, everyone sells. Who's everyone? Key point, who's everyone? Everyone is market makers, big players who had spot positions hedged with perpetuals. And what happened in this case, to keep it brief, is their orders got filled at terrible prices or never got filled at all. The details are in Patreon in the 6th Street Crypto podcast, along with some unbelievable charts about altcoins versus crypto stocks. The reason altcoins are trading so badly has nothing to do with altcoins. It has nothing to do with crypto. Nothing to do with crypto. Sorry. Right? It has to do with people's positioning, wounded trading desks trying to recoup money by selling inventory. So if you look at SUI and you're like, why is the market down? That's why. Now, this is a very important point. If you have positions that everyone owns sinking, and how do you know that everyone owns them? Well, because they're down. Because market makers, they were popular. They're selling them. You have to go on a treasure hunt to find out what's going up when everything is going down, because they may have fundamental value and they're outside this market maker debacle. So Zcash, obviously, we talk about it every day, green when everything is red, right? YouTube member podcast yesterday, my host says you're lucky if you get a small dip. You're lucky. Higher lows are in effect. Propy, a base real estate coin. Problems with the banks out there, anyone? Up 20% today. Clearpool, a lending protocol from Just Dario, the best macro mind out there. Up 20% today. TAO up 2%. Decentralized AI. Monero, privacy. Okay, you get the point. Stuff is up. And the stuff that's up is this cycle's bag. So if everything you have is down, maybe you're holding last cycle's bag. Because I can tell you right now, with the way credit, with the bubble in stonks, even though that can also create crypto volatility, the only affordable asset is crypto. I mean, do you realize that altcoins outside the top 100 are as cheap as they were back after the DeFi crash in December of 2020? Now, you probably weren't there for that, but let me tell you about it. DeFi comes out in a dead market. So central banks print $14 trillion in the month of March 2020 for cough, cold, and flu. DeFi explodes. Chainlink, synthetics, Compound, Aave, Uniswap, Vertical, up until September. Then what happens? Rectember. It goes all the way back down. And we thought it was the return of the bear market, and it was all over. Sound familiar? Don't go anywhere. Think about it. So what happened in December 2020? After everyone got done selling, after the big crash, and it looked like it was all over, what happened? Straight up for altcoins, with Bitcoin going with it. You got to ask yourself, especially if there are components in the market that are actually going up, you may have stuff outside this market maker nightmare. Like PEAQ is up this morning. That's a DePin play. Decentralized cloud. We went over that yesterday in the YouTube member podcast. Pretty straightforward stuff. 2 large caps, 1 small cap. This is a treasure hunt. It is. It's a treasure hunt for a way to get outside the crash and into the next cycle's bag. Now, here's a radical notion. Everybody has this way of measuring the cycle, and technically, according to half of Twitter, rightly so, based on old math, the cycle should be over. The top is in, that's the end. Here's another notion. The altcoin top, in my mind, was the Solana meme coin craze in the early part of 2024. Solana 10x from the lows, memes 1000x, boom. That was the altcoin party. And frankly, it's been winter ever since for most coins. Even with the election spike, so what? Most people round tripped it. Unless you were a swing trader and caught that move, everything else, hodlers in altcoins really haven't gotten much out of it. You were better off hodling any type of crypto-related equities, which has turned into a bubble. Again, more on that with the 6th Street Crypto podcast and Patreon. Crypto, I can't believe I'm going to say this. Crypto relative to its own stonks, to crypto-related stocks. Bitcoin miners have gone out, taken out all kinds of loans, pivoted towards AI, gotten on that hype trade. It's ridiculous. Bitcoin miners used to be super cheap stocks. Now they've like 5x'd, and everyone is selling Bitcoin at 108. Crazy. Everyone's probably talking about Bitcoin going to 105. Well, guess what, folks? You know that whatever's going on with altcoins has nothing to do with crypto, because if it did, it'd be dragging Bitcoin lower. I mean, ETH is below 4,000, but ETH is not a disaster, right? It isn't. And Solana's been at 180 for 2 years. Nothing is happening here that should shock you if you understand what happened with the market makers, and if you understand whether or not you have the next cycle's bag or the last cycle's bag. Now, gold. So don't go anywhere, because you need to know this about gold and the real reason why gold went down. The real reason. People cannot borrow dollars. One of the reasons why people were kind of panicking and buying gold was because they were afraid of the dollar lending market freezing up. Right? Banks there's all kinds of solvency issues, bad loans, scary stuff. People got scared, they bought gold. Now, gold and silver goes high enough, and you have this situation with the shutdown where there's no sugar, there's no dollars flowing through the system. So ironically, with people worried about the lending market, what's the only way to get dollars? Sell dollar assets. So if you are Argentina and you have a massive problem and a currency crisis and you need dollars, well, you get $40 billion credit line from the orange man himself. And then you start selling all the gold you have, because when you sell gold, what do you get? Dollars. And it's the same thing with silver. Right now, of course, you're going to wash out speculators. You're going to wash out retail. You're going to wash out a whole bunch of people. But the real point is that people are afraid. And then people got more afraid and had to sell gold because that lending market is frozen. So it went up because they were worried about it, and it went down because they were forced to sell gold to get dollars. That's how bad it is. Now, undoubtedly, if you're still with me, you're like, Bill, what does this have to do with crypto? Because the Federal Reserve has to fix this problem. There is no sign that they're resolving the shutdown. You thought it was going to be resolved 2 days ago, but everyone's just like, whatever. I'm starting to wonder if both sides are completely content to create some sort of like lending crisis and blame it on the other party. This brings in the Fed. This is why Bitcoin can't go below 107 something, which I'm proud to say has been a pivot for 2 or 3 days for Patreon Platinum. Right? Like, I haven't panicked because Zcash won't go down and Bitcoin can't take out a support level because market makers don't have to sell Bitcoin because there's a perma bid below for Bitcoin. right? Especially with gold and this credit problem, now making headlines on things like Bloomberg. It's definitely out there. So the bigger coins are fine, and the old coins are still suffering from the crash. Now, again, when the Fed comes in, when the gold trade consolidates, even if it's for a couple of days, Bitcoin's got to follow. Now, you do have to be somewhat careful in stonks. Hear me out. If gold just turns around and goes right back up again, that's a signal that something is way wrong, in my opinion, right? In other words, if you blow out all these speculators and you have like vanilla sellers, like sovereigns trying to get money, and they gobble all that up and take it up, then there's something wrong. There could be something wrong in the gold market, and there could be something wrong in the banking lending market as well. Hello. Again, either way, I think crypto wins. Now, another risk to crypto is the stock market, right? If the stock market all of a sudden lurches lower, the AI stocks, all this nuclear power, quantum computing, they had alt season over there. That's the biggest risk to crypto. But I'm going to tell you what, if you've taken the heat and you believe in your bags, there is no point in getting out of the positions you care about or getting out of crypto, even if you have to stick it in Bitcoin or ETH. There's no point in getting all the way out of crypto. Be honest with yourself if you've got last cycle's coins. But if you love what you got, hold on to it. And you better hold on to your hat if Zcash takes out 300. Because, we talked about a couple different coins. We talked about Zcash. We talked about Dash. We talked about Bitcoin Cash. And we talked about Monero. We love 2 out of the 4. Again, YouTube member podcast. And I think we have crypto therapy. First part of that stream was free. So check that out. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because there are baby Bitcoins that are doing well. People are after Bitcoin outside BlackRock. Now, I understand your bag is probably down, but the point is the cryptocurrency market is making new bags as we speak. You just have to figure out what has a bid when everything else is down. Like Avalanche has a bid. That's interesting, don't you think? Right? Somebody's going to be looking for a layer 1 somewhere. Aptos is up 3%. You're like, what's Aptos? Well, you should look into it, because SUI, SEI, and Aptos were the 3 Coinbase layer 1s that led the first leg of the rally back in the fall of 2023. There is stuff that can move, right? Also, formerly Fantom, right? Sonic up on the day. TAO up 2%. Okay, you get the point. This is not where you want to quit. It's not where you want to quit. It's actually a point where you want to get more involved. Now, let's go back to Zcash. Let's go back to the stuff that's up. If Zcash does not suffer the same fate as gold, right? So gold was a Momo trade. Everybody FOMO'd in, and then it got dropped. So if gold consolidates, okay. Now, if Zcash, which, frankly, you could argue is pretty toppy, if Zcash does not go down, wow. Okay. That would be a sign of extreme strength. Now, if you start looking at TA, right, ETH has really good support around 38.45. So most of these big coins are near support right now. XRP is in the middle of a range. I can see a return to the top end of the range. Bitcoin has a lot of great support at 106. Okay. And Solana, which just had a Hong Kong-based ETF approved, also has a really good DeMark 9 bottom and may be headed for 194. Because what the market is doing is compressing the range in the bigger coins. In other words, if I wasn't showing you the charts, you'd be seeing this, it's the range, it's the spike, and then now that range is compressing. And when you compress the range enough, you eventually break out. And then part of the roadmaps that we give to people in Patreon, like it's working pretty good. Like October 22nd was supposed to be deep water volatility. So swimming out in the deep water, you were supposed to have insane volatility yesterday. And guess what? You got it. Okay. Now what? Okay. Altcoins are down. By the way, another little fact about these altcoins is that part of this problem where the orange man had this thing that he said, and then Binance broke in Asia time. So it's interesting that every night you go to bed and you wake up and they're hitting it overnight, US time. Interesting that these wounded trading desks are getting out. Oh, God. News coming across the tape now from Eagle King. Here's Jim Cramer. Okay, crypto due for a push today. We are in 2000 territory on speculative stocks. It is where the cockroaches are. But at the same time, Jamie Dimon said cockroaches are ending. He announced a $1.5 trillion fund that unwittingly stoked a huge speculative wave. We must focus on this before people get hurt. Trim your positions. Okay, so what Cramer is telling you is that crypto may go up today. Okay, but he wants people out of certain types of stonks. And you know what? I hate to say it. He's not wrong about that. The biggest risk to crypto is what's going on in stocks. And if you don't know what to do in crypto, I can tell you what I'm doing, right? I got money parked in Bitcoin and I got Zcash. And if Zcash goes down, I'm buying more. If Bitcoin goes down, I'm buying more. And I'm just sitting in ETH and XRP because the big five should be okay, even if this thing is a mess. The definition of okay, not investment advice, is they could go down, but they're going to come back. Now, what's the only thing worse than waiting? A little Warren Buffett lesson. So stay tuned for this. What's worse than waiting? Waiting when your bags are down and the market is volatile, right? Especially intraday. Everybody wants to go back to when Bitcoin was at 2016. Yeah, I want to go back when Bitcoin was $500. Yeah, okay. No, actually you don't, because you get the kind of volatility that you had yesterday, right? Down in the morning, rush up to the 50-day moving average at 112, and then smack back down again, right? And, Cramer is right in the sense that you have a lending problem sitting on top of a stonks bubble. Not a wonderful combination, but a dream for crypto come true. Because anybody who's going to tell me we don't need decentralized real estate mooning today, decentralized lending up today, right? Decentralized money, AI, DePin, come on. And don't forget about XRP. Ripple is an XRP treasury company. So if they're mooning all of these treasury companies, why would anybody fade? Honestly, why would anybody fade XRP, especially if it's down? Kicking XRP when it's down makes absolutely zero sense because it's a fast version of money. Just like Zcash is a private version of Bitcoin, right? There's Bitcoin Cash. There's Monero. Yeah, I know. I keep pounding the table on this because it trades like a champion. And it may continue to trade like a champion until the market turns, which either could be in the next 2 days or in like early November, after the New York City, mayor thing. I don't want to say the E word, right? The mayor thing, because that could also be very interesting for privacy, depending on who wins that. And that is an underrated catalyst for crypto and equities because, New York City arguably being the financial capital of the world. There are catalysts. There are catalysts that are positive, but you may have to wait and deal with volatility in the meantime. Okay. Breaking news. The government shutdown could end this week, according to the Orange Man's advisor, just when it was getting fun. Okay. One side that wants to shut down on the left, they seem to be giving up, or at least that's the talk. And you know what? That's just talk. If they end the government shutdown, it's because the Fed and the Treasury told them to. Because again, if countries are going bust and have to sell gold to get dollars, they have to stop fooling around now. They have to. And again, they stop fooling around. That's them admitting there's a problem. The Fed comes in thereafter. Probably the reason why stonks aren't down in this environment is because they're expecting the Fed to not only cut rates, but to flood the market with liquidity. They see these problems, and it's kind of this bizarre thing with stonks, right? Good news is good news, and bad news is good news, because bad news brings in the Fed. Wouldn't it be nice to have that mentality in crypto? But one day we might, right? Because bad news could be that equities are no good. Little news about Nvidia. Stay tuned for this. I saw a tweet today. Maybe you should do a little Perplexity or a little Grok and find out how much Nvidia stock the CEO is selling per week. Got a little bit of a bubble going on there. Got CEOs cashing out. Okay, what happens when normies who are currently searching for crypto content on Facebook, but probably not buying because they're too scared by the price action? What happens when they're not afraid anymore? And what happens when they realize, yeah, I'm done with Nvidia? I mean, how many big down days would it take in stonks for everybody to go, okay, I got to rotate over? I got to rotate over. I mean, I'm seeing a story on CoinDesk this morning that whales are moving, because it's not a taxable event, supposedly, from spot Bitcoin over into the Bitcoin ETF. I don't know why they would do that, but can you imagine that there's demand for the Bitcoin ETF coming from the actual crypto community? Maybe it's a sense of desperation for somebody to get a hold of the spot Bitcoin. Anybody ever think of that? Because remember the supply shock? There was an ETH supply shock. There was a Bitcoin supply shock. Everything was a supply shock until you had this Binance, problem, and the market didn't function. That doesn't mean there isn't a supply shock. It just means that so many people lost money. They're forcibly selling crypto, particularly the popular cryptos that they kept on hand. Right. So if market makers are all selling at the same time, what do market makers do? They provide liquidity when no one else will. Well, if the people who provide liquidity when no one else does are all selling, what happens? Okay, it's what happens to your bags. That's an explanation. Okay, again, the details, the charts, all that stuff is in the 6th Street Crypto episode over on Patreon. Let's welcome the Spartans and all our members who are here from YouTube. Zepedas, Hal Lopez, getting to you at dinner time, bro. MJ Hits, Fuzz Crypto, what's up? Cisco, a member. How you doing? Jav, Crypto Pulse, PWB, good evening. Mojo, King Silverhand, what's this stream about? So this stream is about crypto. This stream is about research. This stream is about how to save yourself from the future, as my colleague from 2050 will tell you. Clyde, Felix, TXL, welcome. You Smoker, Tales from the Crypt. Dude, I look like Tales from the Crypt with the way this market is trading. Jay Asser says, bro, let me sleep. Shut up. Some dude scrolling. Sir, we wish you a good night. T-Bone, a Spartan Colonel, welcome. Right? Cisco, Chris Hamburger, a member. Right? Joe Moore, Justin Casey, and Stefan. Good morning. Joe Moore says, systematic delusions are often quite deceiving. That's right. That's right. Now, what are the delusions? Well, you have certain sectors in stonks. Okay. You have the absurd valuations of altcoins versus any other asset, including the big cryptos. Ridiculous. And when you see this altcoin, like small and mid cap altcoin dominance chart. There are small cap gems. We're talking about 200 market cap, 300 market cap on the chart. You know, there are mid cap gems out there, because how much cheaper can it get? Even if you had a stock market crash and some of these coins went down 20%, well, they're already down 80%, or some of them like PEAQ have rallied and they're correcting. All right, Hal Lopez enjoying lunch. That is the market update for today. We will see you later on today or tomorrow.